Hello students, today's agenda is to check homework. We'll be dividing complex numbers and you will be able to work on 1.8. Today students will be able to divide complex numbers by using the conjugate. And so we have to start by asking, what is the conjugate? Well, in previous lessons we learned that the conjugate of a term is when you change, we have the real number and the imaginary part of it, and you change the sign of that imaginary part. Okay, so the conjugate of this will be 5 stays the same and you change the negative to a positive, so it's going to be 5 plus 3i. The conjugate for 2 minus I is 2 plus I, right here. And the conjugate of I minus 3 is negative I minus 3. So all you're changing is the sign of the imaginary part of it. Okay, so that's the conjugate, and we're going to be using it for the division of complex numbers. Okay, so let's start with the first one. If they give you to divide 3 plus 4i over 3 minus 2i. And so the first thing that you need to do is find the conjugate of the denominator. Conjugate. And you're going to multiply by 1 by putting the conjugate in both the numerator and denominator. So the conjugate of 3 minus 2i is 3 plus 2i. And we're going to use the same conjugate over here. Times 3 plus 2i times 3 plus 2i. So, and the reason is because it's like we're multiplying by 1. Anything divided by the same thing, it's equals to 1. So basically by doing that multiplication of 1, we're not affecting this, okay? Okay, since we're going to be multiplying, we're going to multiply straight this binomial times this binomial and this binomial times this binomial. So we're going to do it separately. Let's do the numerators first. And so you're going to get 3 plus 4i times 3 plus 2i. So it's this right here. 3 plus 4i is right here times 3 plus 2i. Okay? We're going to get the answer by doing what we did in the previous lesson. So it's double distributive property. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 2i is 6i. Then we're going to do the second term. 4i times 3 is 12i. And 4i times 2i is 8i squared. We also learned in the previous lesson that I to the second power is equals to negative 1. So we're going to bring down the 8. This I squared becomes negative 1. And at the same time, we're going to combine like terms. So this 12i and this 6i, we're going to be combining them. So bring down the 9. 6i plus 12i gives me 18i. Positive 8 times negative 1 is negative 8. We combine the constant numbers and we bring down the 18i, and 9 plus negative 8 is 1. Remember that different signs we subtract and leave the sign of the greater 1. So that's the answer, but it's the multiplication of the numerators. Okay, so that's gonna go here, which is 18i plus 1. In the other, for the denominator, we're gonna multiply now 3 minus 2i, 3 minus 2i, times 3 plus 2i. So this is the denominators now, the numbers or the terms or polynomials in the bottom of the fraction, okay? And we're gonna do the same thing because we're multiplying basically, okay? Same steps. So again, distributive property with the first term. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 2i is 6i. Then negative 2i times 3 is negative 6i. And negative 2i times 2i is negative 4i squared. Whenever we have, in here we're going to be doing two things, combining like terms, and also remember that whenever we have I squared, that's negative 1. We bring down the negative 4 to multiply it on the side. And whenever we have positive and negative of the same term, they cancel each other. And so we end up with 9. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4. And 9 plus 4 is 13. So that's going to be in the denominator. So this is going to be your answer. One thing that I forgot, in the future, we're going to need this 18i to be second. So you might find it as 1 plus 18i over 13. Okay? So maybe that's going to be the case for in the future when we're working with the quadratic equations. So what was the point? Why did we multiply by the conjugate? The main point is to get rid of the complex numbers in the denominator. We want just one number, okay? No imaginary numbers in the denominator. And so that's why we had to do this. Okay, let's do another one. So for number 2, we have 3 plus 4i over 3 minus 4i. Remember, to find the conjugate, you always get the number in the, or the polynomial in the denominator. That's the one that you're going to find the conjugate. And remember that the conjugate, you're multiplying both the numerator and denominator of the same conjugate, okay? It's going to be 3 plus 4i. So it's the conjugate of this one. You also put it up here, okay? And now you start multiplying, but again, numerator with numerator. So I'm going to put that in here, and denominator with denominator. So 3 plus 4i times 3 plus 4i. This just happens to be the same by coincidence, okay? And we start doing double distributive property. So 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4i is 12i. Then 4i times 3 is 12i. And 4i times 4i is 16i squared. The I squared becomes -1, and we're going to multiply that by the coefficient. And at the same time, we're going to be combining like terms. Okay? So, I'm going to get 9. 12i plus 12i is 24i. Positive times negative is negative. 16 times 1 is 16. We combine the constant numbers, and 9 minus 16 is going to be, remember, different signs we subtract and leave the sign of the greater one. So it's going to be 16 minus 9 is 7, and the greater one is negative. So you're going to have -7 plus 24i. So that's going to be the answer for the numerators. It's going to be -7 plus 24i. Now we're going to go to the denominators. It's going to be 3 minus 4i times 3 plus 4i. And so it's going to be double distributive property again. So 3 times the 3, 3 times the 4i is 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 4i is 12i. Then the second term is -4i times 3 is -12i. And -4i times +4i is, negative times positive is negative. 4 times 4 is 16, and I times I is I squared. This becomes -1 times the coefficient, which is -16. At the same time, we combine like terms, but because one is positive, one is positive and one is negative, remember, and it's the same, one positive 12, one negative 12, they cancel each other. So we end up with 9, and then negative times negative is positive. 16 times 1 is 16, so positive 16, and that gives me 25. So that's going to be for the denominator, and so that's how my answer is. Yeah, and I had forgotten you have the constant first and then the one with the I. And it's just because that's how we're going to be looking at the quadratic equations. Okay, so that's more convenient. Okay, number 3. Number 3 says 2 plus 7i divided by 3 minus 4i. We use the conjugate of the denominator. Remember, the conjugate, all you do is just change the sign of the imaginary term. Okay, so you're multiplying this by 3 plus 4i. So 3 plus 4i. And again, you just multiply straight. So it's going to be 2 plus 7i times 3 plus 4i. And so we do this double distributive property. 2 times 3 is 6. 2 times 4i is 8i. Then we continue with the next one. 7i times 3 is 21i. 7i times 4i is 28i squared. Remember that this I squared becomes -1 times 28. At the same time, we combine like terms. And so we get 6. 8i plus 21i is 29i. 28 times -1 is -28. And we're going to combine the constant numbers. So it's going to be 29i. In here we have positive 6 and negative 28 becomes negative 22. Oh, and I forgot. Remember, this goes first. Okay, so it's going to be actually negative 22 plus 29i. It is just to get used to it because we're going to be seeing it when we look at the quadratic equations. Okay, for the second part is the denominators. It's going to be 3 minus 4i times 3 plus 4i. Again, double distributive property, so 3 times 3, 9. 3 times 4i, 12i. Negative 4i times 3, negative 12i. Negative 4i times 4i is negative 4i times positive 4i is negative 16i squared. And I forgot to change color, but that's okay. In here, the I squared is equals to -1. We bring down the negative 16. We combine like terms, but again, these cancel each other because we have the plus and the minus of the same. So they cancel each other and we have 9. Negative 16 times -1 is positive 16. So this is 25. And so this is for the numerator. So it's going to be negative 20. You can't see it. Okay, so it's going to be negative 22 plus 29i over 25. And so that's going to be your answer. Okay, I'm going to do one more. And so the last one says 6 plus I over 3 minus 2i. We multiply by the conjugate of the denominator, and so it's going to be 3 plus 2i. The same number or term up here, we multiply them.
Con esta canción nos despedimos por el día de hoy, así que muy buenas noches y nos vemos el lunes, si Dios lo permite. Feliz noche.
Sorry about that. Okay, so we're gonna get 6 plus I times 3 plus 2i. We do double distributive property. So 6 times 3 is 18. 6 times 2i is 12i. Then I times 3 is 3i. I times 2i is 2i squared. This becomes -1 times 2. At the same time, we're going to combine like terms, and we get 18. 12i plus 3i is 15i. 2 times -1 is -2. We combine the constant numbers, and so 18 and -2 becomes 16 plus 15i. And that's the answer for the numerator. Now for the denominator is 3 minus 2i times 3 plus 2i. Again, we do the double distributive property. 3 times 3 is 9. 3 times 2i is 6i. Negative 2i times 3 is negative 6i. And negative 2i times 2i is negative 4i squared. Remember that this I squared is negative 1 times the coefficient, which is negative 4. At the same time, we combine like terms, but these are opposites, so they cancel each other, and so we get 9. Negative 4 times negative 1 is positive 4, and that gives me 13. So the answer here is 16 plus 59 over 13. And with this, you now can work on 1.8 and have fun.